Welcome back to the tutorial course on Android app development. In this lecture, we will discuss dynamic views. There are two types of dynamic view controls that we can use in an Android app, list view and grid view. On the next few slides, we will learn the list view control. List view is a view group that displays a list of scrollable items which are automatically inserted into the list using an adapter. The source of scrollable items is usually an array or a database query. The result of the array or the database query is then converted into a view and placed into the list of scrollable items. Let's now learn the term adapter. It is a bridge between a view and the underlying data for that view. The core function of an adapter is to take the data from the data source and supply it to the list view. On the next slide, let's continue discussing list view. As mentioned, the adapter acts as a mediator between the adapter view and the data source or the underlying data for the view. An adapter gets its value from two sources, either from an array or an array list, or from the database adapter that reads the data using a cursor. A cursor is an object used for reading data from the database. An adapter provides access to the data items and is responsible for creating a view for each item in the data set. As shown in the figure, the adapter reads the data from the data source, either from the database using the cursor or from an array, and delivers it to the adapter view. In our case, it is a list view. The list view sets this adapter. Now, let's familiarize ourselves with a list view control. We can create a sample fragment called list view fragment in our application and can use this control. In Android Studio, create a fragment named list view fragment inside Weather app. We have now created a list view fragment and added it to our home activity class. We will now create a list view inside the list view fragment. On the next slide, we will learn how to create a list view from the fragment list view.xml file. Let's now create a list view in the XML file and add its required width and height attributes. We will set both the attributes as fill parent. We will then define an ID for the list view to access the instance for setting its data. Let's now learn how to create a list view object in the list view fragment.java class on the next slide. We now will create a list view object as list view. We will then access the list view object from the XML file using the findViewById method. Next, we will set the days available in a week as a list view content in a string array. We will now add the data source to the array. For this, we need to create an array adapter with a name adapter. The new adapter object has 4 parameters. Let's discuss each parameter. The first parameter is a context object, and we set it as the current activity object, which is getActivity. The second parameter is a layout for the row. If there are contents in more than one row, we need to create a new layout XML file and then reference the XML file name. Since we only have one text view, we will use the default android.r.layout.simplelistItem1 layout. The third parameter is the ID of the text view to which the data is written. we will use the default android.r.id.text1 ID. The fourth parameter is an array of data for which we use the string array values which we had created. Now, we assign the adapter to ListView. Finally, we run the app. The new list view is created and displayed. If the content height is less than the list view height, there will be no scroll in list view. Because the content height is less, there is no scroll. Let's see the scroll functionality. We need to add more content for increasing the content height. As a result, the scroll will appear in list view. Let's run the application. We can see the scrolls in list view. On the next slide, we will continue discussing list view. We will now implement the click functionality for a row in the list view. Implement the listview.setOnIt.em method. Inside this method, we will get the list view clicked item position. We will keep that one in a variable. From the list view, we will get the clicked item value also. We will also keep that one in a variable. We can display these sets of information as a toast message to the user. Now, run the application to see the toast message on the click of any cell in the list view. It does show the position, the starting position being 0, and the value in that position as a toast message. This is all about the control list view. On the next slide, we will discuss the grid view topic. Android Grid View shows items in rows and columns using a two-dimensional scrolling grid. The grid items may not be predetermined, but can automatically be inserted to the layout using a list adapter. Now, we will create a grid view in our application. First, let's create a new fragment named Grid View Fragment and load the grid view inside this fragment. Next, we will create a grid view inside fragment listview.xml. Let's create a grid view and set the required attributes such as width and height for the column. Thereafter, we need to set the number of columns. We set the numColumns attribute to autofit. Now the system will automatically decide the number of columns depending on the screen size of a device. Then, we set the vertical and horizontal spacing between the columns and the gravity attribute to the center. Finally, we can now verify the output in the design view. On the next slide, we will learn how to create an object of grid view and access its instance. On the previous slide, we created a grid view with the required attributes. Now, we will create an object of grid view and then access its instance from the XML file in the gridviewFragment.java class. We will show images inside the grid view. Then, we create an image adapter class. This class will give the image values to the grid view. Now, we will extend the image adapter class from the base adapter class. We have created the image adapter class. To use the base adapter class, we need to implement a few mandatory methods, so we will implement the required methods for the adapter class as well. we will create an image array with the required image names. Now, the getCount value inside the adapter is the length of that array. Therefore, we will set it as the length of that array. There is now a method called the getView method, which will return the view for that particular cell. So, we will create a new image view inside this getView method for each item. We will create an image view object and set its parameters similar to layout parameters, width and height, scale type, etc. Finally, our adapter class is ready. On the next slide, we will learn how to set the adapter to grid view. We can now set this adapter to our grid view. The grid view implementation is completed. Let's now run the application. It does load the grid view contents as rows and columns. According to our requirement, we can change the different attributes of this grid view. Now, we can implement the click listener for this grid view. Inside the onClick listener, we print the position of image view clicked as a toast message. Let's now run the application. We will click any grid. It does toast the position of that particular grid. This is all about the control grid view. This brings us to the end of our discussion on dynamic views.